been a lot of interventions, so the time of others has been extended, which means I'm going to have to reduce the time limit to 4 minutes after the next speaker in order to get as many people in as possible. Jackie Doyle-Price.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And it gives me great pleasure to support this bill, which has been obviously the product of work from input all over the House, and it is at its best for that. But I particularly want to welcome the definition of what constitutes domestic abuse, and in particular the emphasis placed on sexual abuse in the definition. Because we all know that sexual abuse is very much in the toolkit of any abuser. And just as in the past domestic violence has been a taboo subject, the role of sexual violence has been too. And what's been striking about the passage of this bill is that I think that is a game changer, and the clause which deals with the issue of rough sex most certainly is. And in that respect, I think this is making a very, very clear advance in favour of the victims and against the abusers, and we must make sure we do everything that we can to protect those most vulnerable and bring what is the purveyors of evil crimes to justice. Clearly, sexual violence is something which can take place in the domestic context, not just with partners, but also with children. And I think that's something that we also need to consider. I also would like to highlight the comments made by my honourable friend, the member for Romsey in Southampton North, when she talked about the sharing of sexual imagery by phones, which again can be considered a domestic abuse, given that it's come from relationships. And I think that example just really highlights how normalised sexual abuse has become in some contexts. And personally, I feel very, very strongly that we collectively in this House, male members as well as female members, we must do all we can to make sure that women feel empowered to have control over their own destiny when it comes to their relationships. And I fear that some of the pornography that is now so widely circulated and available is normalising sexual behaviour which is not in the interest of our women and girls. So I think this is something that we all collectively must be vigilant about. Now, I've tabled 2 amendments really to, again, give added emphasis to the importance of sexual violence as a consideration of the domestic violence context. And I've done so in consultation with Rape Crisis England and Wales, with whom I have the great pleasure of giving so much support, and they do so much work. And quite often are considered the Cinderella in the way that for the reasons that I've described. The real issue with victims of sexual violence is it never leaves them. And it's one thing bringing a perpetrator to justice, but these women, these girls, these victims are not pieces of evidence. They are people, and they are fragile, and they need our support, and they need a lifetime of support. Now, I'm very pleased that the NHS have recognised this with their lifetime support care pathway for victims of sexual violence. But, as with many things in public policy, we can talk the talk, but we don't always walk the walk. Now, I'm really pleased to see that police and crime commissioners regularly step up to the plate to commission sufficient services for victims of sexual violence. But I see all too often that locally NHS aren't doing their bit, and equally we expect more from local authorities too. So the amendments in my name really are there to reboot the emphasis on sexual violence as an element of domestic violence in terms of the functions of the Domestic Violence Commissioner and the local authorities. And I hope the Minister in his response could perhaps articulate the very real need for the holistic support for victims of sexual violence and an expectation that the Domestic Violence Commissioner will do the requisite thing and encourage good practice throughout our public services. In view of the time, which is very short, I will say little more than that, but I just wanted to quickly address the points being made by about the Right Honourable Member for Kingston Hall North amendment on abortion. There's been much criticism made of that, which I think is unfair, frankly. The real point is that this is a law which is 50 years old. It is no longer fit for purpose. But because it is seen as a free vote issue, it is something that governments just do not look at. Now, I welcome to a point what my honourable friend the Minister has said today. But I actually think generally we need to look more holistically at the safety of our abortion services. And it's all very well to say, OK, we've had these regulations for COVID, let's just extend them. I don't think that's good enough. I think that we need to make sure that we're told nowadays as many as 1 in 3 people have access to abortion. Let's look at it more holistically.
Nadia.